Have you experienced an event in your life that has literally caused you to freeze up, to not get beyond that specific time and place and moment? Well, today we are honored to have on Deeper Living Bishop Hilliard, who is going to be visiting and sharing with us on his new book, After the Fall. Incredible insights, so stay with us right here on Deeper Living.
From coast to coast across North America, this is Deeper Living, bringing the inspirational marketplace to your front door. We exist to bring you the latest and greatest from authors, artists, and artisans around the world. You're going to love this.
Hello and welcome to Deeper Living. I'm Meredy Book, and today we're joined by Dr. Donald Hilliard. And thank you so much for joining us. And your book, After the Fall, is really setting people free. The response and the reviews that you've gotten on this book have been tremendous. I've read them, and you're touching on a subject that really isn't always addressed in the church, and it's really resurrecting a life from shame, from guilt, from sin. And just you've been a pastor. You're a pastor of Cathedral
International Church. Mm-hmm.
And you've been in the ministry for how long?
I've been preaching for 30 years. I've been pastoring the same church for 24 years.
Right. So, and I know, I'm sure from the perspective of pastor and in the church, you probably bring a completely different insight into this topic. And as we were talking before the show, you were saying how relevant this is right now things that are happening. And share just a little bit, I guess, from a pastoral perspective of why you feel this topic is relevant right now and the impact that this book is having, because it is resonating with so many people.
I think it's so important, particularly the subtitle is Resurrecting Your Life from Shame, Disgrace, and Guilt. And what we are seeing right now, most regrettably from people that I happen to personally love and have great affection for, and have preached for and shared with, we're seeing a great deal of problems within the church. But that does not mean that God has changed.
Right.
And I think that we need to be very careful about finger pointing and rock throwing and be more concerned about resurrecting and restoring and renewing. God is concerned about restoring.
Absolutely.
And so after 24 years of pastoring, there are very few things that I have not seen.
Right. Oh, I can imagine. And that's why I think this is a hot button issue.
Yes.
A lot of people, just by the nature of the word shame, don't want to talk about it because it infers something that is personal, it's deep. Most people don't share why they feel shame. A lot of people don't recognize what shame is in their own life. They just can't figure out that they're not getting past something or getting beyond something. It may have been a childhood thing. You mentioned a divorce, a marriage falling apart, affairs, things that can happen in your childhood, abuse,
incest.
Lots of things. It hits on all the hot topics. And of course, the church has played a very big role in defining how we understand and how to deal with shame, how to deal with these events, and how to handle these. And that's what you address in the book. But I want to make this distinction, because we were talking about this, between guilt and shame.
Yes.
And what is the difference between guilt and shame?
I think shame is a consistent beating, whereas guilt is a healthy sense of remorse.
Right.
And there are things that we should feel guilty for.
It's the conviction.
The conviction.
It's guilt is coming from you've done something morally wrong, and you're feeling convicted by that.
And you feel convicted. In fact, one of the challenges of this society is that there is very little guilt at all. There is very little conviction at all.
Right.
And we just roll right on. But there are moments where we need to be guilty and feel the sense of awe, the sense of conviction that should lead us to God, who has the ability to deliver us from that which has caused us to feel shame.
Right.
And the shame sometimes is what many of us kind of hide behind. I say in the book that far too many of us wear shame like a tailor-made garment. And that is not God's will. And so you have people who won't teach because of shame. They won't go back to school because of shame. their marriages are wrecked because they never got over the shame of being having an incestuous relationship or being abused, or the shame of having an alcoholic parent, or the shame of living in a nice neighborhood and then having your parents break up and having to move to a bad neighborhood. And dealing with all of that, you have to confess that, face it, because you cannot fix what you don't face.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that it's so important to make that distinction. And I think a lot of times, too, shame is brought on, for the most part, by sometimes circumstances that we can't control, whereas guilt is brought on by things that we have absolutely played a role in. And that we have absolutely participated in making a conscientious decision, where shame really is something that almost inherently has a victim. And that victim doesn't know where to go. And I want to talk about that a little more when we come back. We have to take a short break. But when we come back, I want you to share really how the church and how, as a pastor, you are tackling this with grace, and how you guys are tackling shame in this day and age. So stay with us, and we'll be right back right here on Deeper Living. Welcome back to Deeper Living. If you're just joining us, we're visiting with Dr. Donald Hilliard and his new book, After the Fall. And we were talking just briefly right before the break on, from a pastoral perspective, and really being sort of the shepherd of a very large church that has grown, and you've been in the ministry, and to tackle the subject of shame. And share a little bit on how the church is really addressing this right now in this day and age.
Well, I've been, as a pastor for 24 years, I have certainly taught, preached, and had programs to help people come out of shame for many years. But this book is a result of a series of messages that were taught in our church as a result of some church issues and scandals that caused a lot of guilt, a lot of pain, and caused persons a lot of shame. So I had the responsibility to do a few things. Number one, to stabilize the church, and number one, to help the guilty parties come to repentance, and then as they walked in repentance, to help them walk in freedom and not walk in shame, and then to have the church not to beat them back into shame. You see, and that's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that's the stuff that makes or breaks a church.
That's what makes or breaks a church.
It makes or breaks lives. Because many people will walk away, and that's it. That's all they know. That's as far as they want to go.
And they don't want to go any further. And a lot of us, we want, I want you to feel bad and ashamed about what you did, but I don't want to talk about the stuff that I need to bring to the altar.
Right. There's a lot of the blame and the finger pointing. And the church, and I say the church in general, and I think that's where religion gets separated from real, true the real biblical,
Right.
the way truth should be spoken,
Yes.
and in love, and
Yes.
giving someone that grace and sort of that redemptive out. You
Yes.
have to give someone an out and have that grace to allow them to have made those mistakes and not judge them for that.
I think that's
And
a very good point.
The church just hasn't been responsible that way.
I think when I say, and I speak as a pastor who does, a fair amount of preaching and teaching, and I love the church. I love the church. I think the church has done a tremendous job in helping lives, bringing people to wholeness.
Right.
I think sometimes, though, we are the best actors, and we have to take off the masks and allow everyone to understand that all of us
Right.
have something that God has given us grace over.
Right, absolutely.
And you can come back, and this is what this book, why I'm so passionate about this book. And I want somebody to know today that I don't care what it is, how long you've been in it, God can bring you out of it, and you can take off shame, and you can walk in freedom. But as we stabilize the church, it was necessary for me to sit down. I think one of the things that we don't do in the church like we used to do is sit people down.
Right.
And
hold them accountable. Bring them in.
Remember, your
It's-
mothers used to say to you, mothers would say, go somewhere and sit down.
Yeah, yeah.
Until I deal, and I'll deal with you later.
Yeah.
But in that sit down period, that's not just I'm going to,
You're sitting there going, okay, how can I spin this so that I can make this a little bit
how
better?
to make it easier.
Yeah.
But when she said go sit down, she meant she was going to deal with you.
Right.
And I think when we as leaders, as a pastor, when I say you need to be sat down, sit down means that sit down to hear God.
Right.
Sit down to be renewed.
Right.
Sit down to be restored, which includes prayer, which for me includes psychotherapy.
Right.
Because a lot of times there's a lot of hidden stuff that
Right.
has never, ever been unpacked and never been dealt with.
Right.
It means you need a prayer partner. Show people the path back to the Word of God.
Right, right.
Resist the enemy and rehearse your future.
Well, they got there somehow.
Yes.
So they're going to need all of that to get out of it. It just didn't happen overnight.
And sometimes they're family patterns.
Yeah, it's a path, it's a pattern, it's something that got them to that place.
Yes.
And since it takes that long, it's going to take just as, not as much time, but it's a process. You
Very good
can't
point.
just
Yes.
assume that it's going to happen overnight. Everyone forgives each other, cries a few tears, and it's over, because all of that's still there. And I think, too, what I'm seeing, at least in sort of this trend, and one that I get excited about as a Christian, is that the church, many churches, I think, who are on the forefront of understanding things like this and understanding how it's affecting the culture and how to really bring the world into the church instead of trying to get the church, get the world out of the church, is really showing the reality, showing who real Christians are, and not, people like to see that honesty. People like to know that we've all fallen from grace. We are absolutely no better than any person out
Right.
there. You and I can sit here and talk about this, and, tomorrow do, in 10 minutes commit a sin, a bad thought, whatever it is. We've
Right.
all fallen from grace. And it's a great equalizer.
Right.
And yet it's so easy for us to forget that in the context of the church, and it's so easy for us to forget that when something bad happens to someone that we don't necessarily really care for.
Right.
Maybe someone that you just kind of go, they brought it on themselves. Too bad.
And we need to be merciful.
Right. It's just
we need to be
very,
merciful.
very easy to do that.
Yeah. We need to be merciful. We need to be confronting. We need to be merciful. We need to help people to see the error. And this whole family pattern thing is very deep.
Right.
If you've never seen anything any different, then you see things as normal that are not normal.
Right,
and
right.
one of the challenges that we see in this culture, and the culture has so impacted the church, is that we have now begun to call what's wrong right.
Yeah.
And we don't even know what right is anymore. And I think, so guilt, I think, is a good thing. Shame is not a good thing that God wants to bring us out of, so that we can walk in the freedom and that we can fulfill our destiny. And a lot of times it takes a good long time. A corporate executive that has become bankrupt,
Right.
a corporate executive that embezzlement. It takes time.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. We're going to have to cut to a short break. Stay with us right here on Deeper Living. We'll be right back after this brief message.
Punish me with loving kindness. My God, it's you I want to know.
And welcome back to Deeper Living. We've been visiting with a Dr. Donald Hilliard. I was going to say Bishop.
That's all right.
What comes with having too many titles. And your new book, your latest book, After the Fall, Resurrecting Your Life from Shame, Disgrace, and Guilt. In an earlier segment, we were really talking about the difference between shame and guilt. Yes. And really the catalyst for this book was a situation that arose in your church. Yes. That was extremely painful. Mm-hmm. And was one of those situations that would really cause a lot of churches to crumble and, mm-hmm. you know, just a lot of things to help. But in order to put out the fire and in order to hold accountability, you were really discussing in this last segment how you brought the parties involved in, sat them down for accountability. And what has transpired? What were some of the things that you really had to work through?
What I found is when I dealt with that issue, that, you know, of course, there are always several other issues. And so when I preached and taught on this, other things in the church began to come up. And,
right.
Which was painful, but it was helpful to make a healthier church.
Right.
Bringing the parties together, challenging people to face their demons. One of the things we talk about in the book, the importance of renouncing things, strongholds in your family.
Right, absolutely.
Patterns of behavior that maybe no one ever told you, son, daughter, this is not right. This is not how this is not how married people behave.
Right.
We don't hit our wives. You know, we're not unfaithful. So we try to do a series of teaching, again, sitting down, counseling, prayer, accountability groups.
Right, which is so important.
You know, so people could feel a sense of, you can talk to me and I'm going to listen to you and not judge you. Now, the other side of the coin is that when those people get restored, it's kind of like working with an alcoholic, and there's deliverance from everything.
Right.
But you're on pins and needles. You know that person is going to make it, but you're hoping that they make it.
Yeah,
and
just that one time. That they won't just give into that temptation or back
because
into
all
that
of us
cycle.
are a decision from destruction or destiny.
Right.
And I think that everyone needs to understand that that regardless to what we have experienced in the past that has been so painful and shameful and caused such disgrace, that grace has a way of bringing us back to God.
Right.
And I think that's so very critical.
And it is. And it's critical, like you said, with this, the accountability, because as you're working through that process, it's so important that this individual or people are covered by people who are not judging them.
Right.
Because it is easy to slip back into that. But it's also very, very easy to, you know, it's for other people who have the spiritual maturity to be able to handle that, to be able to hold that person accountable and not hold it over them and continuously, like you said earlier, to beat them down with it. And, you know, to really just say this is the unconditional. This is the unconditional place that will allow you to be. But it requires a lot of strength because you take a chance on someone who's failed.
You take a great risk and you must be aware of all of the persons that have been affected by this. And, you know, we are all, those of us in public life, you know, we're, you know, that's the challenge of when you have a problem and you're in a public position. And I feel for people who go through these public divorces and these public, everyone goes through something. And we ought to be covering and praying and caring and not pointing and texting each other and did you hear that?
And being the first person to really start perpetuating it, stirring the pot, getting
because
things started.
Today is their day. You don't know what tomorrow may be for you. And so I think that my whole point in this book is to let whether that person's a Christian, a non-Christian, a business person, that there can be a life after the fall. You can recover from the divorce, you can recover from the bankruptcy, and begin to rehearse your future, Meredith. I think that's something that I say that I want to really underline that. If I had a magic marker right now, I would be underlining rehearse your future and renounce your past.
Right, absolutely.
And God has given you a future. Begin to put your focus on your destiny and the good things that God has for you and your family. And He's given you a future and a hope. Yesterday's gone. And I will not allow the pain of yesterday to determine where I'm going to go tomorrow. And that's why we say we can get up after the fall. We can come back after disgrace. We can come back after guilt. And we need to take off shame.
Right.
Take it off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, and shame is probably, I think, one of the most significant tools of the enemy to constantly say, you are no better than this.
I agree.
You know, to hold everyone back from their destiny.
You're right.
And that's why it is important. And we were saying how, and I think it's so incredible as a pastor of the church, as the leader of a church, that you took the time to work the situation out, the fallout of the fall.
Yes.
And to really, literally take it to task and take it in hand. Because a lot of churches don't know how to handle this. There isn't necessarily maturity in the leadership to handle this, and churches dissolve and fall away, and people leave, and that's it. That's all these people have.
And I want to say this: not everyone in leadership knows, because I didn't know. See, I didn't know, but there are people that assumed I knew. I didn't know, but when I found out, it had been going on. And so I want to just give this, as we say, shout out to pastors. You know, a lot of things you may not know, but you need someone who is covering enough to know and to help kind of heal the situation.
Absolutely. And we're going to take a short break right here on Deeper Living, and stay with us as we continue to visit with Bishop Hilliard.
Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. From the Father of lights. From the Father of lights.
And welcome back to Deeper Living. We've been visiting with Bishop Hilliard. And, you know, when I opened the show, one of the things, I opened it with is really how shame literally has stopped people from moving on. It paralyzes them right where they are. Or if there was a particular event or a catalyst in their life, it's almost like you shrink inward. And we know people in our lives that have been like that. It's almost like if something tragic happens at 18, they sort of have never moved beyond that because they can't grow into their destiny. What you addressed this in one of the chapters, one of the early chapters, and about how shame is paralyzing.
It paralyzes you.
How do you get beyond that?
I think
how do
you have to face, again, you have to face it. You can't fix what you don't face. And very quickly, you have to face it and then be willing to take it off. I can't want to take it off you more than you want to take it off you yourself.
Right, no one can do that for you.
No one can do that for you. So you've got to be willing to admit that I don't want to walk this way any longer. And then you've got to renounce it. And then you've got to resist the urge to go back to the old way. And that's why I'm a great proponent not only of prayer and fasting and oil and the word and worship and praise, but I believe in counseling. I think the church needs to push counseling more often. We need to encourage people to get into counseling. And I also want to say, Meredith, that I want to speak to someone today who may be so paralyzed by shame that they're considering taking their lives. And I want to let you know that your future is too great, your destiny is too awesome, and you are not going to go under. Even though this particular moment you may feel completely disgraced, you are stressed out, but God has your name, God has your address, and He is able to deliver and give you a future. You have a hope, and I want you to live on and run on and see what the end is going to be. I don't want to preach, but I really feel that right now.
You can preach it, brother. Absolutely. But it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's powerful. The grace of God is powerful.
The grace of God is powerful.
And as we, I think as we invite that in, it's going to release, as I said, the reviews, the feedback from this book has been tremendous. It is setting people free. And it's so timely, and it's been wonderful. It's been great to have you on our show.
I'm so honored to be here.
I'm looking forward to having you back. I know that you have written several books, and as you continue to write these and address really the needs that you see in your own flock, in your own church. And you have a website. It's www.donaldhilliard.com. And for this book, as well as information on your ministry and other information on probably resources that you've used.
And conferences.
And published wonderful.
And of course, the cathedralinternational.org
right.
you can go to.
Right, absolutely. So all of that's available. We also, if you go to the Deeper Living website, you will find a link there to Deeper Shopping, and we have this book available after the fall, available for purchase if you want more information on this, and also a link to Dr. Hilliard's website. So thank you so much.
I want to thank you. It's been a wonderful time. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for joining us right here on Deeper Living, and continue to watch us daily. Hopefully we can encourage and bless your lives by the guests that we've had on our show and will continue to have.